Hey peeps, what's up? I haven't been around for a while. I haven't made a video in like 3 months. I just checked. It doesn't seem that long, but it's been 3 months. I just haven't been recording videos. But I have some time today to do one, and I'm gonna do one. Damn it! But yeah, I just haven't. It's mainly because of my new job. I took a job as a second grade teacher last year, and it's been a new experience for sure. It's been an exhausting experience, but a very rewarding experience. I've enjoyed it. And also, kids are little sacks of germs. I have been sick, I swear to God, for like 3 months straight. It's been fucking crazy. I mean, literally, it's just been in the last week or so where I felt like I've gotten my voice back. I feel like I've been stuffed up for 3 months. I mean, for 3 months I've been sounding like this. Like I've just been congested and stuffed up, and it's been nuts. Nothing serious. I haven't gotten COVID or anything yet, which is crazy. It's amazing, but I've just been sick for like 3 months straight. It's been, insane. And yeah, it's you know, being an elementary school teacher is exhausting on its own, but when you're also kind of fighting off sickness every single day, at least for me, I haven't had a lot of energy. So um, I feel like I'm finally feeling back to normal. So, and I just, about a month ago, I've been wanting to do this Fluke video for a while because about a month ago I digitized my Fluke collection. And so I've got all the records here. I know I've mumbled about in the past about how I don't like showing records, but I've got them. They're just sitting here. So they're here. So those of you who like me to flash records, I'm going to do that today. I have them all sitting here. And Fluke's a good band. I feel like Fluke is an underrated band that maybe doesn't get noticed the way they should. And I have a story that's kind of cool where I actually interacted with the band, at least one member of the band, which kind of leads to an interesting story. So I just thought people might be interested to hear that. But yeah, I was there from almost the beginning with Fluke, so I have a lot to say about them, and I have the records and the knowledge. So I thought, let's do this. Now, Fluke is a group. There, it was three guys. Oh man, It was John. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing these names. John Fugler, um, Mike Turnier, and Mike Bryant. Two Mikes and a John. Three British dudes. They started making music in the late '80s at some point. And they pretty much pumped out music throughout all of the '90s. And then I think their last album came out in like 2004. I have it here. I'm pretty sure it was 2004 or 5. And they lost a member of the band during that last album phase. And then they disbanded after the Puppy album came out in 2005. So they were around for a good 15 years, and they put out a string of really great records and did some really great remixes on top of that. I'm not going to talk about the remixes and show those records. This video would be way too long if I were to do that. But I check out the remixes they did too. They did some outstanding remixes for Bjork, um, Opic, New Order. They just, yeah, and some other lesser bands, not lesser, I just mean lesser known, not lesser quality. But usually when Fluke did a remix, it was really solid. It was like a outstanding track on its own. And I do have a story regarding that, which I think people might find interesting, where I actually talked to a member of the band about it. Um, but at any rate, Fluke was, for all intents and purposes, a dance band with a vocalist, which, wasn't common. Hasn't really ever been common, I guess. They were like a club band. Their tracks were very club oriented, but they had a vocalist who had a very distinct voice, sound of his voice, and his delivery style and his content. His content was he could get pretty political. It was pretty biting. And it wasn't something you typically heard with a club band. Um, he had a lot of things to say, and his lyrics were pretty cool. And they had two modes, Fluke. They were a dance band, but they definitely made some music that was more head music, that was down tempo. I wouldn't say it was ambient. It was just kind of down tempo, um, headphone music. And they did both really well. So I think that's why they deserve to be talked about because over the years, I don't know that a lot of people know about Fluke. I think maybe some people know of them and have never heard them. I do think most people have heard Fluke and they just don't know it because they've had a couple of songs that have been plastered all over commercials. And here in the United States, one of their songs was like one of the main songs they play on Sunday Night Football. So those of you who watch football, you might recognize some of their music. I'll talk about that song in a while, but anyway, yeah, I think they're an underrated band. People compare them to Underworld a lot, which I think is fair. I think that's a fair comparison. Dance music from the 90s era with vocalists. Yeah, I can see that comparison with Underworld. It makes sense. I generally think when I think of Fluke, I compare them to Yellow. I think that's a more fair comparison. Maybe not so much purely musically, but their lyrics and their vocalist and their music. I mean, to some extent. But I hear more Yellow when I hear Fluke than I hear Underworld. And that is no, I am not dissing them. Yellow is one of my all-time favorite bands. I'll have to do a video on them at some point. I love Yellow. I always thought Fluke was they were more brethren with Yellow than Underworld, but the comparisons for both are fair. Um, so this was my personal intro to Fluke, and it was as Lucky Monkeys. They recorded under this name Lucky Monkeys. This came out in 1990s, you can see. And at this point, I don't remember where I got this. I got it somewhere. And this is this is aged. I mean, even then it sounded aged when it came out. It's very I hate to use the term Balearic, but it sounds very Balearic. Those of you who don't know what Balearic means, it's kind of like a almost a new agey, dancey sound. Um, uh, well, look it up. You'd probably be able to look it up and get a better definition of what Balearic is than what how I could explain it. But it's basically kind of like a soft pop dance, just fluffy dance sound that existed in the 80s, very specifically in the 80s, and it's made a kind of a comeback recently in terms of popularity. Balearic has really kind of found a new footing in the last decade, taking that old 80s pop sound and then mixing it with new technology. There's some really good stuff out there. But this is like an early Fluke, the first Fluke record, as far as I know. And it wasn't under Fluke, it was Lucky Monkeys. Again, kind of like a Balearic sound. Um, this was the first Fluke single that I remember. This is the first time I remember seeing the words Fluke on anything. This is Philly, their single Philly. This came out on Creation Records too. Creation was known to be, like the home of, you know, Oasis and Slow Dive and all that indie dream pop that we all love now. This came out on Creation. And again, this would fit into the Balearic sound. This was a little more housey. Um, Good stuff. It's dated, but I think this record is still listenable. It's not terrible. You can hear it now, and it doesn't sound awful. Um, they put out the album that came after that was the Techno Rose of Blighty, and I never had that at the time. I never bought it. I do have it here in a different package, and I'll show it in a moment. But they followed this single with the Techno Rose of Blighty, which was, um, yeah, it was just an extension of this single. It was very yeah, it was just like a kind of a light progressive house sound with some Balearic touches to it and vocals. It was a little scattered. Listening to it now, it's a little dated. And I didn't hear the record when it first came out at the time. I ended up getting it a few years later. The album came out in like 1990 or 91. I didn't hear it until 93. It just kind of skipped me by. I never liked it then, probably because I was so into the harder sound of techno and house at that time. But when I ripped it digitally, last month. It grew on me. I liked it more than I've ever liked it, way more than I liked it back then. And I just don't think I gave it the time it deserved back then. Listening to it now, I think it's dated pretty well. It does sound a little dated, but for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed listening to it now. And I'll get to the album in a moment, but I'm going to skip over it so I can talk about this. This was the first time I remember Fluke sort of breaking through. I remember they became much more popular with this record. And this is their most yellowish moment. If they had one song that really sounded like a yellow song, it's this. It's Slide. And this is a 5 mix 12-inch. It's got 4 mixes from Fluke, and then this last mix is a Justin Robertson mix, which is not good in my opinion. I was never really a big Justin Robertson fan. He had a group at the time called Lion Rock, and he was hit and miss with his tracks. He had a formula and a sound that worked for him for a few years. I never really got into it. I do have Lion Rock records. They're not bad. In terms of listening to them now, though, yeah, they've dated significantly. And this mix here, I never really liked this mix to begin with. And when I was ripping it last month, I definitely don't like it still. These 4 Fluke mixes are really good. They've stood the test of time very well. Just like hard, tough, rolling progressive house with some sinister, weird vocals. There's not much that sounds like this. This is a good single. I didn't love it at the time because it sounded a lot. It was just different from what I normally listen to at that time. But it's dated really well. This record's like 30 years old now too, so it's been out for a while. And yeah, it's aged pretty well. They followed that single with these two. You know, oops, sorry for the glare there. The electric guitar single came out on two different 12 inches, and this was the beginning of a theme with Fluke. Their covers are important. They had a metallic theme. The covers of their records from here for like the next 5 years of their career in the 90s, all of their covers would have like a metalish sheen to them. I don't know what that was, but it definitely builds a real strong image in your mind. You know, you can let that image be whatever you want it to be, but they did have this aura of like kind of hard, um, aggressive, almost aggressive themed covers, aggressively themed covers. They all had like a metal sheen to them, kind of mysterious. I think it really lent to their sound too. You never saw their mugs on the cover of their albums. They never did that. It was always like this kind of minimalist metallic sheen to them. And I think it carried through pretty well for, hang on a minute, my phone's going off, of course. Yeah, it lent itself to like a different, it kind of puts you in a certain headspace before you even put the record on the turntable. And that's always a cool thing for a band to do. Kind of have a theme. You see the cover, and you're already kind of at a certain headspace before you even hear the music. And these are 6 tough remixes too. Um, Basically progressive house bordering on techno. Um, 6 really good mixes too. Fluke always delivered a lot of mixes with their singles. Um, every time you bought a single from them at this time period, you definitely got an idea that they put a lot of time and effort into creating this music. They didn't just give you 1 or 2 mixes, they would create a bunch, like a journey's worth of remixes. They did that really well. Um, this was the next thing. I got the 7 inch crammed in here. Let me pull this out. Groovy Feeling. This is my personal favorite Fluke record they ever did. This is, if I had to only keep one Fluke record, it would be this. Mainly for I think it's called Lollygobble Chalk Bomb. Yeah, is that it? Yeah, Lollygobble Chalk Bomb remix. It's an instrumental version of Groovy Feeling. This 12 inch has the album version on it. I think that's called Make Mine in '99. Yeah. ice cream themed, as you can tell. But the Lollygobble Chalk Bomb mix is the best Fluke track ever. It is so good. If anyone asked me to start where to start with Fluke, I would say start with the Lollygobble Chalk Bomb remix of Groovy Feeling. It is a beautiful song. I love that song. Anyway, this was the next single they released from their second album, and start here. If you're getting into Fluke, that's a great place to start. This is the promo. I just thought, I have this different. It's got a different cover. This is a double pack. It's got two records. It's got an extra remix on here that you don't find on the 7-inch or the 12-inch. In fact, if you were going to buy Groovy Feeling, I would recommend you get this because it's got the tracks are spread out too. They have more space to breathe. It's a double pack again. There are two records in here, so yeah, you get these really nice meaty sounding remixes, and they're spread out. They have more room to breathe and just sound better. I would recommend getting that version. So this is their second album, Six Wheels on My Wagon, and they packaged Techno Rose of Blighty in this, and they added a few more songs too. As you can see, it's like there are 3 records stuffed in here. This is the second album, and Techno Rose of Blighty. This is the original version of this. Looks different. It's got a different cover. I looked this up once. It does have a slightly different cover, but this is the one that got packaged as Six Wheels on My Wagon. And this was the first time I heard this when I bought Six Wheels on My Wagon. I hadn't heard this, for 2 years, after it had been released. This is pretty good. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it's aged pretty well. I didn't like it so much at the time. I just think my headspace was somewhere else. But it's aged pretty well. I like it now. I liked it much more than I liked it then. But this is a great album, Six Wheels on My Wagon. Love this album. It's a little choppy. Sorry for the glare again. There's the track listing. It's a little choppy. Again, like it was a slightly disappointing album because they recycled tracks that they had previously released on their singles. So if you were a fan like I was and you were paying attention, you got some tracks on here that you already had, like Groovy Feeling. This is on the 12-inch. Glide Dub, that's on the 12-inch. Electric Guitar Humbucker, that's on the 12-inch. Then they put another version of Slide, this version, which is also on the 12-inch. So you get 4 tracks here that were already previously released. So that was a bummer. I mean, they're good songs, but you definitely kind of got this, almost the entire first half of the album was stuff that you'd already heard. So in that way, this album's it's tricky to listen to as a fan at the time. You just felt like you were getting a lot of rehash, and you were. The real gem of this album is the second disc. There are 2 records. The first record are these first tracks. Second record are these. And you could tell what Fluke was trying to do. Like this first record's like nothing but club tracks. It's a bunch of dance songs. And then on this second record, these tracks, they're all down tempo. There's an ambient song in there. They were trying to create this different mood. It was like 2 records and 2 moods. And then you also had the Techno Rose of Blighty album in there. So there were like 3 different phases of the band all present on this record. There's a lot to soak in, but it's really cool. This record's 30 years old, and when I was ripping it I've always loved this album, and I was wondering if it had dated at all, but it really hasn't. It really hasn't aged a day. It still sounds pretty fresh. Techno Rose of Blighty does. That sounds dated. Six Wheels on My Wagon does not sound dated. It still sounds pretty fresh. And I like this second record better, the down-tempo stuff. I think the lyrics are really cool. John Fugler was a great lyricist, great voice. The music production is impeccable. It's so good. These guys were just, they thought of everything. The detail in their music is there. I feel like I've been listening to this album for 30 years, and there's still things that I pick out of it that I haven't heard before. So these guys this album is where they really came together with their sound and their production quality. Again, the album was a little disappointing at the time because there's so much rehash on it. But I think at the time they were probably thinking, well, we can't assume that everybody has our singles. And so they put some old songs on here that had been released previously. That's the only downside to the record. Listening, if you're just getting into it now, it won't be a big deal. But at the time, yeah, I was like, well, shit, I've already heard almost half this album. That's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I think over time you just kind of you lose sight of that and you just focus on the music more. And it's still a great album. Six Wheels on My Wagon. This was the single they put out after that. Again, oh yeah, I forgot to point that out too. You see the metallic theme here. And with Groovy Feeling, you had the metallic theme was the braces of the kid. So it's subtle. Sometimes it's more subtle than others, but it's still there. This was the next single from that album. Again, it's a bubble, but even this has like a metallic sheen. Very minimalist. It is a bubble, but you see these reflections. I mean, you might look at it and think, well, it looks metallic yet again. And this is a cool single. This was the last single of like I guess, this period of Fluke. Six Wheels in My Wagon had a very like meaty progressive house sound, and this does too. This was not on the album, Six Wheels in My Wagon, but this sounded like it should be. Like if you were to make your own mix of the album, which I've done, this would fit really well on Six Wheels on My Wagon. It has that sound, that Fluke sound. Um, Now, after that, they moved on to the next phase of their career. I might put a couple of images to show the covers of these records because I only have the promos of these. This is Tosh. It came out as a 2-record promo set. These are the promos though. The commercial release of this is actually a picture of a drain. I probably will show an image because I want to keep pointing out this metallic theme they have. But the cover of this commercial single, there's a picture of a metal drain with water draining through it. What's cool about these promos, though, is there's remixes on the vinyl here that you don't find on the vinyl on the commercial release. I got these, through one of the DJ pools I was in then. I don't remember, I don't know exactly remember where, but these are littered with remixes. One of these has 4 Fluke mixes, and the other one has remixes from Mantronic and Fila Brasilia. The Fila Brasilia remixes are really cool. The Mantronic mixes, I think you could pass on those personally. Not a big fan of those. This is another single from their second album. This is Bullet. Again, 2 different versions. This is a double pack. Fluke mixes and Atlas remixes. And then this 10-inch has Dust Brothers mixes on it. The American Dust Brothers, not the Chemical Brothers. These are cool. These just sound like Dust Brothers mixes, kind of like stripped back hip hop with lots of samples. Very good remixes. I would recommend the Bullet mixes are very cool. I really like these. And again, the commercial, I'll try to show an image of that commercial release. The commercial release of that is basically a gun with its magazine open, I remember. I'll find an image and show it. But again, with the metallic theme, it's basically a gun with the magazine open, kind of an aggressive looking cover. Obviously, with a gun, always going to be aggressive, have that aggressive sheen to it. And this was their third album, Auto. Again, with the metallic minimalist design. You see this? This is my personal favorite Fluke album. I love this album. This was the high point of their career, in my opinion. Their production quality really came through on this. And the only downside to this is the single record, and it's like an hour long, this record. So there's 30 minutes of music plastered on each side. Having said that, it's still pretty decent pressing. When I was recording it, the sound really came through. I didn't have to blast the volume to get the sound quality to come out. So yeah, not the greatest pressing because so much music is on it, but it's not as terrible as other pressings that have 30 plus minutes of music on one side. Great record though. So good. Very down tempo. Really, the only dance track is the first track, which is Bullet, which is a single. Some of these are like a down tempo, like these last couple of tracks are kind of dancey. or at least okay. This track okay is, but it's still pretty down tempo. All in all, this is a very chill, laid back, down tempo album with really cool lyrics. Their lyrics really started shining through. It sounds like a very cohesive album. Unlike Six Wheels on My Wagon that had a lot of rehash on it, this was like new stuff. It was a new Fluke album. Lots of new stuff to sink your teeth into, and their sound was different. So yeah, this is my favorite record. Now this leads me to a story. Let me see if it's still in here. Oh, it is. Oh, that's so cool. Hang on a second. Um, so these Fluke records, let me pull this out. Yeah. Um, yeah, this is still in here. This is great. So Fluke had like fan clubs and stuff. Back in those days, their record company would have these little flyers in here, and they'd ask you to answer a couple of questions. Like, you know, let me see here. What's the question? Three favorite groups, three favorite publications. Are you interested in the internet? This came out in 1995, okay? So every Fluke release would have these little cards in them, and um, they would have this record, I'm pretty sure, let me see here. Yeah, their email address is on this record. It's no longer good, I'm sure. But back in 95, no one was using the internet, okay? People weren't emailing each other yet. That was still a new concept. Relatively new. Some people were, but the vast majority of the public did not even have computers, okay? So I had one, of course, and when I bought this record, I pulled out the little fan card. I emailed Fluke because their email address is on here. It's on the card, it's on the back of this record. So I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to email them. I emailed them and I got a response from Mike Tournier, however you spell his last name or say his last name, Tournier, I don't know. He responded to me within a couple of hours. I remember now, again, this is back in 1995, but I remember emailing him and he responded within a couple of hours. And we started to have an email communication. And I asked him what they were working on after Otto, like what their next project was. And he told me that they had just finished a remix for Bjork. They had already remixed Violently Happy and Big Time Sensuality from her debut album, her first album. Her second album, Post, had just come out, and Bjork was using them again to remix Hyper Ballad. And he told me we've just done a remix for Hyper Ballad, but she rejected one remix, and we just had to redo it. Now, he was telling me all this. Now this is right from this is from the horse's mouth. Mike Tournier from Fluke. He was like, "Yeah, we did one remix, but she didn't like it, so we just did another remix. But we're going to be releasing our first remix under our Lucky Monkeys name. Remember that first record I held up in the video, the Lucky Monkeys? That's Fluke, just under a different name. But I guess Bjork had rejected the first remix of Hyper Ballad, and Fluke had gone in and done a more down tempo remix that had her vocals intact, and she released that one under her own name as her own single. But Fluke kept their original remix to release under their own names, which is this Lucky Monkey, Bajango is what they ended up calling it. Bajango, obviously a take on Bjork. But apparently, I guess hopefully some people find this story interesting. But apparently, this remix was turned down by Bjork. She didn't like it. And this mix is it sounds like a Fluke track, but they took her vocals out. There are no vocals. The only vocal you hear is at the very beginning. You kind of hear you hear a quiver of her voice. You don't hear her actually saying anything. But Fluke took just the little a flutter of her voice and sort of put it through an oscillator, and you can hear it kind of flitting around in the background. But they basically took her voice out and just made a dance track. Now, Hyper Ballad is a dance track. It starts off as kind of a ballad, and then it gets hyper at the end, as it's appropriately named. But they took her voice out. I'm assuming maybe she didn't like that. I don't know. But yeah, this is basically, if any of you are Bjork fans, this is basically a discarded Fluke remix of Hyper Ballad. And that's coming straight from Mike Tournier. It got rejected by Bjork, and Bjork let them keep it as their own, and they released it as this. And as I remember, this was on, yeah, this was on white wax. Those of you who give a shit about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting story. I don't know, for both Fluke fans and Bjork fans. This is a remix that Fluke did that Bjork turned down. That happens sometimes. Remixes get turned down. The artists don't like them. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool story. Like one of the Fluke members themselves told me all this. So this is back in 1995. I'm scouring my memory for these details, but I know for sure I don't want to talk about anything else he and I talked about because we did dig into certain aspects of the music industry, and I won't talk about that. But I remember these are the details he told me about this Bjork remix. So anyway, interesting tidbit, interesting factoid for those of you who care. And this was the commercial. They ended up releasing this commercially with some extra remixes. And this version, the original mix is a little different than the one you find on the promo. They kind of dubbed Bjork's voice completely out of it on this one. You don't hear it really at all on this one. You hear it on that white vinyl one, not this one. So anyway, there's my Bjork story. Yeah, back then, man, it was cool. You could email. I emailed so many bands back in those days, man. In the '90s when I was a kid, I remember. Oh my God, I remember emailing like groups like Coil and System 7 and Andy Weatherall and all these guys, and they would respond. They liked it. They liked having that kind of direct communication with people, and some people still do. They do. I mean, I've been able to do a couple of interviews on this very channel with guys who have seen what I'm doing, so it's easy to connect with people. Back then, it wasn't so easy though. Email was still a new thing. Um, anyway, so this came out after um, Auto. This was a post Auto release. But yeah, Auto definitely was my favorite. It's still my favorite Fluke album. And the two singles from that, Tosh and Bullet, were pretty good. Remixes were okay, but nothing compared to the album. I still think that Auto is their best work, their most focused, realized work. Oh yeah, this I pulled it. This was in my Fluke section. I just thought I'd pull it out. This is the Wipeout 2097 soundtrack. This was a video game for the PlayStation. It's a racing game. This has a couple of Fluke tracks. Just an all around really really good soundtrack. Future Sound of London, Prodigy, Orbital, Underworld, Photech, Source Direct, the best drum and bass album or best drum and bass band of all time, Source Direct. Man, I should do a video on Source Direct. Okay, if you guys like drum and bass, check out Source Direct. Okay, do yourself a favor. These guys were nuts. Some of the best music I've ever heard. Source Direct. Left Field, great soundtrack, but this had a couple of Fluke tracks. It had the original version of Atom Bomb. This version of Atom Bomb you can only find here on this soundtrack, and they did another track here. I think it's called V6 or something. Where is that? Yeah, U6, V6 down here. Anyway, I pulled this out because it was in my Fluke section. Really cool soundtrack. And how often do you buy video game soundtracks that are really good? Not very often, in my opinion. Okay, so we're moving on to the next phase of Fluke. This is absurd. I have a couple of different promos for this. Again, these are promos, so these aren't the covers that you'd end up seeing commercially. I'll try to put some photos up, images up of the original, what they originally look like. This is the song that you hear at sporting events, like Sunday Night Football used to use the intro of this song in their broadcasts. You've heard this song. I think most people have probably heard this song. You just don't know it. As far as I know, this is probably the most popular Fluke song ever, and you wouldn't know it because you just hear it in commercials and shit. Not my favorite Fluke track. It's okay. It's pretty good. This one has Fluke remixes. This one has remixes from Fatboy Slim and Headrillas. The Fatboy Slim mixes are slightly better. They're just kind of straight up house mixes. The Headrillas mixes are okay. Not the greatest remixes, but not my favorite single either. This is Atom Bomb. All the versions, you have four versions on here that are all different than what you find on that Wipeout soundtrack. And then, this is a promo. There are two records stuffed in here, and there are like two more remixes on here that you don't get on the commercial release. So lots and lots of remixes, all by Fluke, and they're all pretty good. Fluke did a really good job of remixing themselves. There's no question about it. Again, here, let me see. This was kind of like this doesn't really have the metallic theme. This was like a character from the video game, so I think this was more video game themed than their own theme. Um, this was the part in their career where Fluke kind of started losing me a little bit. They kind of started doing the whole prodigy thing, and they hired a woman to go on tour with who kind of looked like this girl, and she danced around on stage. They had a dancer, and I don't know. I thought it lessened their image a little bit. Not the woman, but just the fact that they were the band with like a dancer on stage, like it was a rave or something. I felt like that kind of lowered a little bit what they had done before. They seemed to be a lot deeper than that. They were a lot deeper than that, in my opinion. Um, but I guess when you go on tour, you need a spectacle that people can watch, and so they hired this hot chick to prance around on stage, and who doesn't like to watch that? So I kind of get it on that level. But yeah, I thought it lessened their impact and image a little bit by turning into this band that had a dancer on stage. I felt like they had more to say than just that. Just an opinion, okay? I know people will disagree with that, but this was the stage in Fluke's career where I started kind of thinking, what's going on here? This is um this is the Squirt single. Now this again with sort of the metallic theme here, the pro price sticker there, but kind of a metallic theme there. You'll see it continuing with their next album. This is Rosado. Now, you'll notice that Rosado came after Otto, and that was no mistake. Oh, here's the metal again, metal like a mixer on the cover here. Again, harsh, minimalist, metallic images here. Very cool cover, I think. Rosado is basically kind of a remix album of Otto. Um, like with Six Wheels on My Wagon, there's a little rehash here. The version of Squirt is the same version you find on the 12-inch, but Absurd and Atom Bomb are the same versions you get on those 12 inches. So again, the rehash is kind of making itself evident again. But this was a combination of old tracks and new tracks. The old tracks were remixed. None of the songs that were on Otto are exactly the same, of course. Excuse me, sorry, nose is itching here. Um, they remixed a certain number of songs from Otto and put them on here because Otto was such a down tempo album. They took those tracks like Tosh, and oh, what were the other ones? Tosh and Setback and Squirt. Those songs were all on Otto, and they re-realized them for this album, which is super high energy. This album doesn't let you have to breathe. This is like hard BPM dance madness from start to finish. This is a really good album. Don't get me wrong. I really like this album. The best songs on here are the non-singles, I think. It starts off with Absurd and Atom Bomb, and then I feel like the album really gets going. But yeah, it's kind of an amalgam of Otto and new stuff. A reimagined version of Otto with some new tracks all mixed together. And this is a really solid album. I think most people probably know this album when it comes to Fluke more than others. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is a great album in its own right. I don't think it's as good as Otto, but yeah, it does have that rehash feeling a little bit. Yeah, it's aged really well too. When I was ripping this, it's a cool package too. It's got some nice lush inner sleeves, and if you can come across this, I would highly recommend picking this up. It's a good press, good pressing, sounds good. And as producers, man, these guys are on top of their game on this album. The ideas were flowing through them and perfectly executed. This is a really I mean, when you need your dance music nailed down with spikes, with precision, it doesn't get any better than this. These three really shine with their production values on this album. There's a lot to take in on. It's a double album and it's full of music. It's, good 70, 75 minutes long. Lots of good stuff to sink your teeth into. Again, not perfect, a little bit of rehash going on there, but still a great album. Oh, this was the promo that was released prior to Rosado. This is a really cool collection. It's a gatefold. Nothing on the gatefold. Nice lush inner sleeves. It basically, I think they call it a sampler. It's like a Rosado sampler. It has some versions of Squirt and a couple of excellent Tom Middleton remixes of Slide. Middleton from Global Communication, for those of you who don't know. Middleton also recorded under various other names like Amba and Cosmos. And if you don't know Tom Middleton, go check him out. Mod Wheel is another name he recorded under. But Global Communication is the band that he was in that most people know of. He does a couple of mixes of Slide on here that are great. The Tom Middleton mixes are the reasons you want to pick this up. Yeah, it's got one disc with remixes of that, and then it's got another disc of Squirt remixes, and then it's got another disc of 2 tracks from the album from Rosado. But worth it. Great, great release. So that was the end of that period, basically. And I think, unless I'm wrong, this was the last single that Fluke released as the threesome, Mike and John. I could be wrong on that. Maybe Mike Tournier, the guy that I talked to over email, he ended up leaving, and I don't know if he was present for this one. I don't know. I don't know if he even says that on here. I don't know. But this is a really cool single. Slap It. This came out in 2001, and it's basically just a 10-minute dark progressive house / techno track. A little bit of vocals, not many vocals on this one, but a great record all the same. Now this was their last phase, not my favorite phase of theirs. This was a single. They released a series of these singles that all had similar covers. We have Pulse, we have Switch, Hang Tough. As you can see, they all have different colors, but generally the same cover, same fonts. And basically, it's just like long progressive house music. It's good. It's not mind-bending. It's not genre-changing. It's just pretty generic progressive house / techno music, and it's good. It's pretty good. Of these three, I think Switch is probably my favorite, but they all have a very similar sound to them. This was without Mike Tournier. This is just John Fugler and Mike Bryant together. Tournier had left. And then this was their last album, Puppy. And it has, Switch and Pulse and a version of Pulse and Hang Tough. Good stuff. Just a dance album. I personally, when this came out, I personally felt like it was a bit of a step back for them because I felt like each album they did was sort of like a progression in itself. And this album came out, I think, in 2004. Yeah, so this was 7 years after Rosado. So I thought, man, if it takes you 7 years to put out an album, it better be chock full of like seriously insanely good cuts. But it's not what it is. It's just, in my opinion, just an opinion, this is a pretty generic sounding progressive house album. Not bad. When I was ripping it last month, it's aged fine, They're great producers. That's why their music always shines a little bit more than other stuff. But creatively, there's just not a ton going on here. It felt like they had kind of exhausted what they had up their sleeves at this point. Sort of a progressive house record by numbers. And after this got released, they promptly split up. I don't think there's been another Fluke. These are the inner sleeves. There's a lyric insert stuffed in here too, the way I remember it. Yeah, here it is. You get a lyric sheet. The lyrics are cool. That was one. Here's the other side of it. That was one aspect they didn't struggle with. It was cool lyrics. John Fugler always had a lot of cool things to say. But yeah, they promptly broke up after this. So yeah, I mean, that's the story of Fluke. They they started off with like the Balearic sound, then they went to progressive house sound, and then they did the Auto album, which was more down tempo. Then they amped it up again for Rosado, which was just like flirting with the straight up techno tracks. And then they did Puppy, which was a kind of a step back into progressive house territory, in my opinion. I don't know what they're doing now. I have no idea if these guys are still around under different names. Part of me hopes, I always, when I make these videos, I always hope that maybe a member of the band will see this. I would love to talk to them about it because Fluke in the 90s, man, I loved Fluke. When I was DJing, every time I played a Fluke track, the crowd would go nuts. And even if they didn't know Fluke, you'd put that mix of groovy feeling on there, or you'd put a remix of electric guitar on the turntable and play it, and it would always work. People loved this band. They worked in clubs really well, but they were also good headphone music, and that's a hard thing to pull off, I think. When you're a dance band, it's tough to go home and be that band that someone wants to put on their headphones and just lay down in bed and maybe just, relax with an album. It's hard to pull both of those things off, and Fluke did that. At least they did for me. Maybe they didn't for others, but Fluke was also kind of a precursor for other progressive house bands. I know I've seen interviews with certain bands like Crystal Method and bands like this that cite Fluke as an influence. Fluke they're unique in that they kind of have, I think because of the vocals, because his voice is so dirty and low. He's got a deep, kind of gravelly, nasty voice. Fluke always kind of had, I think some people might think they had more of an industrial edge than they actually did, but people think they have an industrial edge to them. I disagree with that. I really don't hear any industrial influences at all, other than maybe his voice. But I don't think someone's voice makes something industrial. That's in the sounds, that's in the music, that's in the sampling. And Fluke never did that. They were always a dance band. But again, because of the vocals, they were able to kind of flirt with these other genres. And I think that's what makes them unique. I think that's why people still like them. So yeah, I don't know. That's my Fluke video. I hope the story about Bajango is interesting to people too, because yeah, that was a really special moment for me to reach out to the band and have them respond so quickly, and then have them tell me about this remix they did that got discarded. And because yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know that. If I don't know if a lot of people know that Bajango is actually a hyper ballad remix. Um, that might be something that Bjork fans can really get into. But I heard it right from the horse's mouth, right from the band members themselves. So there it is. Fluke's a great remix band too. If you're into Fluke, dig around for their remixes, like from the 90s. I know I've got some stuff over here. Like they remixed a group called Little Axe. This is a promo. But again, they did a ton of good remixes. If you saw Fluke's name on something, you picked it up because they were great producers. Always like, the three guys in this group just seemed to never have a shortage of ideas, man, and they were all good producers. So anyway, I'll shut up now. I think you guys understand what I'm trying to say. Fluke was a great band, no longer with us, but their music really hasn't aged a day. I would recommend starting with Groovy Feeling. If you're just trying to get into it and you don't want to spend a lot of money and start dropping money for the records and the albums themselves, start with a 12-inch and start with Groovy Feeling and the Lolly Gobble Chalk Bomb remix. It is so good. To this day, still my favorite Fluke moment. Okay, so that's my Fluke video. I hope you guys liked it. Feel free to comment. I love your comments. I love discussing with these videos after I'm done. And I'll try to make more videos. I know it's been 3 months. But yeah, until next time, thanks.